Hello everybody, and welcome to the Fortean Slip Bedtime Stories. Tonight, the true story behind the movie, The Entity. Dr. Barry Taff and his associate Carrie Gaynor were overheard talking about the paranormal by a woman in a local bookstore. The woman approached the two men and told them that her house was haunted. She gave Carrie Gaynor some details of the haunting, in which Gaynor told her that he would discuss this with his associate. Dr. Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor arrived at the 11547 Braddock Drive, Culver City home on August 22, 1974. Doris Bither, a petite woman in her 30s, greeted them. Doris Bither lived in the small home with her 6-year-old daughter and her 3 sons. Her boys were 10, 13, and 16. The house at the time was in shambles. Squalid living conditions and a tumultuous relationship between the mother and male children is what the investigative team observed upon their first visit. The investigators reported a feeling of overpressure in their ears while being inside the home. According to Taft, the house was twice condemned by the city. From what is known, Doris Bither suffered abuse from her parents, as well as had several abusive relationships with men. There was obvious tension between the 3 young boys and the mother. The psychodynamics of the home were extremely negative. It seems that the boys, especially the eldest, would harbor some dark and resentful feelings toward their mother. The unconscious mind that is troubled by a physically or verbally abusive environment and negative upbringing is like a lightning rod to the paranormal activities. Doris Bither claimed that the spirits would physically attack her. The reports range from Doris walking around her home and bumping into the ghosts to actual spectral rape. Of course, Taff and Gaynor were skeptical of all of this. Ghost apparitions are a hard thing to prove and collect evidence for. Ghostly rape is even harder to believe. It was not until they saw the bruises in her inner thighs and all over her body, as well as people outside the family corroborating by testifying that they had also seen apparitions, that both investigators started to take heed as to what Doris was saying. Doris claimed that the ghosts were of Asian men. The children also saw these beings. The visions were so frequent that the children dubbed one of the more prominent ghosts as Mr. Who's It. The claim of rape by these beings is one of the most interesting aspects of the case. Doris Bither reported that 2 of the beings were the smallest ones and would hold her down while the bigger or tallest of them would rape her. Dory's eldest son would admit to seeing her mother being tossed around the room. In one instance, he tried to intervene and was thrown across the room by the unseen force. To both investigators, this must have been the most bizarre claim to date. How can you prove spectral rape or even claim it? It would seem that a person would have to be insane to even admit this. The team decided to set up shop and brought in high-speed cameras and photographers as well as other investigators to help capture something on tape. In a famous report, all investigators and equipment, as well as Doris, were in the small bedroom. Cramped and anxious to see any paranormal activities, they decided to have Doris conjure up the beings by having her call them. Doris began swearing and yelling at the spirits while 30 or so investigators were crammed in her room. To much surprise, lights started manifesting around the room. As Doris kept provoking the beings, a greenish mist started to form in a corner. As if it was coiling, the green mist started swirling and growing. Within seconds, the form of a man's upper torso started to become visible in the mist. Very large and a lot of muscles is what they reported seeing. The torso of the being did not show facial details, but did show the investigators' musculature. From what they gathered, this was a male entity. An investigator soon fainted after seeing this. No matter how many high-speed cameras were set up to capture this, none of this ever came out on film. The pictures only show what appears to be a free-floating arc light in the middle of the room as well as some light orbs. The most famous and incredible of these photographs is the one that shows Doris sitting on a bed, investigators surrounding her, and the free-floating arc of light in the middle of the picture. What's incredible and equally unbelievable is that the arc of light appears smooth, even though this is a room with corners, and one would expect bends in the arc as when someone uses a projector to display an image and the image hits in the corners of the room. The photographic evidence produced by the team shows the arc of light floating above Doris Bither with no bends, even though behind it we see the room's corner. After Doris Bither left her Culver City home, the phenomenon ceased to exist in the house. Future residents of the house have not reported anything out of the ordinary. The house remains to this day ghost-free and is in good conditions. Dr. Barry Taff reported that Doris Bither moved from Culver City to Carson, California, from Carson to San Bernardino, California, and from San Bernardino to Texas, and finally back to San Bernardino. While jumping around the 2 states, Doris reported that the phenomenon followed her and her family to every place they moved to, feeding the notion that the poltergeist phenomenon was a manifestation of her unstable environment and mind. He also reports that her psychological state is made apparent when she reported being impregnated by the ghost. Medical tests showed her not to be pregnant but suffering from an ectopic or hysterical pregnancy. No one can say for sure what could have been going on with the family in that small Culver City house, since Doris Bither has not been heard of since the late 80s or 90s, and her kids have not come forward. We cannot know for certain.